Funding for Frontline is provided by this station and other public television stations nationwide, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
When your life is at stake, it doesn't make any difference that the man to the left or the right of you is black, yellow, red, orange. It makes no difference, as long as he performed his duty.
Tonight, they fought America's first integrated war.
When you got out in the jungle, there was no room for prejudice.
Black Vietnam veterans. They were young, mostly poor, mostly undereducated. The foot soldiers of a mean and dirty war, and the targets of enemies that were not always Vietnamese.
Did you see a cross burned in Vietnam?
Yeah.
Where?
In front of my hut.
Tonight on Frontline, the Bloods of Nam.
From the network of public television stations, a presentation of KCTS Seattle, WNET New York, WPBT Miami, WTVS Detroit, and WGBH Boston. This is Frontline with Judy Woodruff.
Good evening. As Memorial Day approaches, we pause to remember our military veterans, those who lost their lives or had them forever changed in war. Tonight, some special remembrances from an overlooked group of veterans about an unpopular war. This evening, war stories about what it was like to have been young, black, and in Vietnam. A high percentage of the men on the front lines in Vietnam were black. By most accounts, they had the highest casualties. They say they were fighting two wars, the enemy and discrimination. But they also talk about battlefield brotherhood and lifelong friendships. Our program is written and reported by Wallace Terry, who covered the war for Time magazine and wrote a book on black soldiers in Vietnam. Our producer is Wayne Ewing. And now, the Bloods of Nam. And I must warn you, this program contains graphic descriptions of the horrors encountered in war.
Vietnam, a mean, dirty war. It consumed American passions for 15 years. It divided the nation more deeply than any other issue since the Civil War. Black soldiers fought and died in Vietnam in disproportionate numbers. That's why we call the front line Soulville. But Vietnam was our first integrated war. It was a time when soldiers, black and white, became brothers against a common enemy. If Vietnam had any redeeming value, it was this friendship. But it was also a place of discrimination, where to gain your self-respect, you stood apart and called yourself a blood. It was a place where communist propaganda urged you to go home instead of fighting another dark-skinned people. This is a film about what it was like to fight that war. What it was like to be in Vietnam and to be black. War stories from the Bloods who went to Nam. They came from the farms and from the ghettos, from high schools like this one, Thomas Edison in Philadelphia. They didn't have the money to sit out the war in college or leave the country. They joined the armed forces. They got drafted. Many of them never came back.
Vietnam is important because 54 former Edison students died in Vietnam. Today we have some Vietnam vets, a couple of which at least are former Edison students. They're going to give you their personal experiences. They witnessed Vietnam. They're going to help you to deal with this difficult concept of war. And
I came to listen to their stories and to hear the questions from the students. And I realized that they hadn't even been born when we went to Vietnam.
How did you feel when you first heard you were going to war?
I mean, the obvious answer. Scared.
For most of us and for you, you're 16 and 17 years old, and you think death is 60 years away from you. But the minute that somebody tells you something or says something that brings death close to your mind, you get scared, real scared. And at 19, they gave me orders to go to Vietnam, and my stomach dropped out. That's a fear. It's fear. Before you even get there, it's fear.
Imagine being on an airplane, getting off and walking into your mother's oven, because that's exactly what it was. When I woke up that plane, my skin broke into a white ash, like into a big sweat. And here I am in this hot climate. They say I have to stay for 13 months. I was scared, man. I was so scared. It's hard to believe I actually wetted on myself. I messed on myself. That first 4 months, I was terrified, you know, and it's a fright that it's unbelievable when you see people drop. You don't know what death is because most of us never see death. But at church, when a family member died, but to watch guys drop below you and you're wondering, what am I going to do? Fire a weapon? You know, practice is one thing, but shooting at somebody for real or something else.
I just got off the plane. They gave me these jungle fatigues and all this other stuff, and they went right to the sergeant, and he assigned me to a place. And that night, we got mortared. And I never forgot that because I thought because of being born and raised in North Philly and going through the street thing that I'd seen everything. Let me tell you, Tatum said it straight up. I was so scared I couldn't fire a weapon. I had this brother told me, he said, Jesse, you're going to have to get yourself together because every night you're going to be doing the same thing. I don't care all the jungle training and all the jump training and all this other stuff you young guys hear about. Don't prepare you for nothing when you get under real fire.
My name is Martin Fleming, and I'd like to know, did you ever kill anyone? And after you did that, how did you feel?
I'm not going to touch that with a... I cannot speak for everybody, but it's a very powerful feeling to take a life. It's a very frightening feeling to take a life. It's not something that you say, I did it and I'm proud of it. You do it because if you don't, he will take you out. Your opponent, your enemy will take you out.